Welcome to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I am super excited about today's episode because not only did my guest write my favorite genre of book, and that's books about women hiking, specifically through hiking. I have a passion for reading books about women doing the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail. But this lady actually did the Wonderland Trail, which is a trail that I did way back in 2009. It circumnavigates Mount Rainier, and I did it with my husband, who at the time we were only engaged. And I always say, I can't believe he married me after we did that backpacking trip together because I did not handle it well. And I tried to bail on the backpacking trip every single day, and I would try to come up with plans for us to hitchhike off that mountain, because it's a hard freaking through hike. So today we are talking to Christine Reed, and she wrote the book Alone in Wonderland, and I happened to just read it. And I loved getting to live through the Wonderland Trail again and through somebody else's eyes. And during the book, she talks about being sober, and when I realized that I actually follow her on social media, and then that I had read her book and then remembered that she was sober, I thought, oh my gosh, I have got to have her on the podcast. So today I got to talk to somebody who knows the power of being alcohol free and knows the power of nature, just two of my favorite things. After you listen to this interview, I know you're going to want to go pick up her book. It is called Alone in Wonderland. And I have to say that it's one of the most engaging hiking tales that I've read, and I really enjoyed it, so I know you will too. You can also follow Christine on Substack and on Instagram at Rugged Outdoors Woman. And you can check out her podcast where she interviews women who have written books about nature and nature-inspired tales. That podcast is called Outdoorsy Women, and I am definitely going to be joining her book club so I can start following along with the authors that she interviews there. Before we dive all the way into the episode, let me remind you that you can hop into the Daymakers community. It is so important to surround yourself with community on whatever you are passionate about. And if you are either brand new to your alcohol-free journey or you've been in it for a while and you're just looking for that community that gets you, the Daymakers may just be it. We have a private message thread community, so you're always just one text away from reaching out to somebody who totally understands your journey. And we also have weekly group coaching calls where you get to connect live and in person with me, where I present a topic to you, and then we're able to talk about your struggles or successes, and I can coach you through anything you may be experiencing on your alcohol-free journey. To check out the Daymakers, just head to the link in the show notes of this episode or any episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast, and you can try out your first 2 weeks for $7. Now, let's dive into this episode with Christine Reed. Welcome to the podcast, Christine. Thank you for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I was telling Christine, so I think I followed you before I read your book, and it's so funny because you recommended your book because you recommend a ton of memoirs of women doing outdoorsy things. And I was like, oh, these are my books. I got to follow this lady so I can always get all the recommendations when I need a new book. And then I read your book, and then all of a sudden I see one of your posts pop up, and I go, oh my gosh, I just read her book. This is the same person. And it all went, and it was very fun.
We've completed the circle.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really know this lady because I read her book. But before we dive all the way into Alone in Wonderland, can you take us back to the version of you before the Appalachian Trail, because you did a portion of that, van lifing, and the Wonderland Trail. Who were you before the trail started kind of changing you?
Sure, yeah. I grew up a military brat, so we moved around a lot. So I am a person with no homeland, so to speak. And as a kid, I was the opposite of athletic. I was the child who cried when we had to run the mile in PE. Yeah. Just feel so bad for that poor child. And my parents cared a lot about my academic success and me going to college and me like being financially independent. That was their whole goals for me as a young person. And I was really naturally academic. My parents were big readers, so I started reading at a really young age. And I think kids who start reading young just learn fast. It's just once you have the power of reading, you can learn anything. And so, I was a kid who read hundreds of books a year and spent my Saturday afternoons curled up with a book on the couch. And my family also was all also reading books on couches. It was like we all just be in the living room reading our own books. And I had my parents were like very loving, very wholesome. They really loved each other. They had a super wonderful relationship that was almost an impossible model to hope to live up to someday. And so I had a really wholesome childhood. And I think sometimes that leads to a period of instability after the childhood part ends. And so I went to college like my parents wanted me to. And when I got to college, I just felt really a bit unsure of what I was supposed to be doing in some ways and unsure of who I was when nobody else was telling me who to be. And so I went into that college experimentation phase of just recklessly throwing myself around the world. And yeah, I started drinking quite heavily about halfway through college, I would say. I started college quite young. I was 17 when I started, so I
Oh,
didn't really
wow.
start drinking much until I was like closer to 19, 20. And yeah, I didn't really have hobbies or passions or interests. I just went to school and worked, and I waited tables part-time for a couple of years, which I don't know if anyone's ever waited tables, but the drinking culture in those kind of professions is pretty intense. I'd go to work, wait tables at a Mimi's cafe, serving brunch. And then my coworkers and I would all get off the brunch shift and go across the parking lot to an On the Border and drink margaritas and stuff. So it's like very much like weekly, this is what we do kind of thing until I graduated from college. That was like a 3 to 4 year period where I was like pretty intensely, that was my whole social existence.
Yeah. And it's funny that you were such an indoor cat when you were younger, and now you're definitely an outdoor cat. It's just like,
Yes.
and I've got to ask this just so people know. You found the Appalachian Trail while you were at work in the office, right?
Yeah, I was working at a health insurance company doing desk work. And yeah, I was just, when you open the internet and it's MSN.com and it has like all these super
Oh, yeah.
clickbaity, just weird stuff. And so there was like something on there about the Appalachian Trail and I had never heard of it. And so I clicked on this clickbait article and just went down the rabbit hole. And immediately, like within an hour, I was like in my mom's office going, I'm going to do this. And she was like, what are you talking about?
It's totally the meme from The Office of Michael Scott being like, I've had this dream since this morning and I will stop at nothing. I've achieved it.
Literally. It was one of those moments though where something in me just lit up at this and it felt like I've been waiting my whole life to know that this was what I needed to do, kind of thing.
I love that. I resonated a lot with your story of never being the fastest hiker and not being naturally athletic and I was like, oh my, I feel like this is the first hiking memoir where somebody has said that, because that's so me. On the trail, I always still feel out of place. And I'm always have to remind myself that everybody's allowed to be here.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it. You're allowed to go out and enjoy nature just like everybody else. Even though these days I'm fine on the trail, but man, when I first started, I bailed on a lot of hikes. Like, I'm quitting. This waterfall is definitely not worth it.
You're like, never mind.
I don't need to see it.
There were certainly times I love to reminisce about living in Arkansas, which is where I went to college. There's this little tiny mountain called Pinnacle in Little Rock, and it's one of those local hills where it's just like, whether you are a hiker or not a hiker, if you are a person who lives in Little Rock, you have to climb this mountain at least once. It's just part of the culture there.
Yeah.
And it's like a 1 mile hike to the top of this mountain, but it is a hard 1 mile. It's half a mile of switchbacks and then half a mile of rock scramble.
Oh.
It's pretty brutal. And when I was in college, long before I became a hiker, before I was interested in hiking, when I had zero hiking experience, I had 4 or 5 different people drag me up this mountain because they were like, we got to go do Pinnacle. It's like a thing that we do. And I had so many like traumatic experiences.
You're like, no.
I also have memories of me and my best friend who we're like drinking buddies, and we were like, we're gonna go do Pinnacle this Saturday whenever we go. We get like halfway up, and then we're like, you know what? Let's just go drink margaritas instead.
You're like, never mind. I don't need the top.
We did not even go to the top of this mountain, and then we were like, let's get out of here.
Oh
This
my
sucks.
gosh. But a lot of your story revolved around your mom being really sick with cancer. And you'll have to refresh my memory a little bit, but she was sick when you started the Appalachian Trail and then had passed away by the time you were van lifing. But How did grief shape the version of yourself you were becoming? Because I love the way it intertwined you have to find yourself a lot after you lose a parent or even a grandparent. And you were doing it out on your own on either the
Yeah.
Appalachian Trail or van lifing.
Yeah. Yeah. She had been sick with cancer for about 2.5 years. She was diagnosed in late 2013, I think, or maybe 2012. Because when I decided I wanted to hike the AT, she was already in chemotherapy treatments and stuff. And I think it really rubbed her the wrong way that I was like, I'm going to go on this grand adventure and do this thing for myself. But I was also 23, and
Yeah.
I think no matter what was going on in her world, which didn't matter to me as a selfish 23-year-old, I was on my own journey. And being a 23-year-old, I was like, I got to figure out who I am and what I'm doing, like all this sort of purpose in life questions that we're asking at that age. And also the questions of who am I if not my mother's daughter? Who am
Mm.
I? How am I defining myself without my relationship with her? And that pulling away from our familial unit that we do at that age. Like all of these things are very normal things that we're doing in our 20s.
Yeah.
And so I was just in that stage of life. And then she got cancer. And I think that for the first couple of years, I was very much in denial about the potential that she might die because breast cancer is often not deadly. Lots and lots
Yeah.
of people get breast cancer and survive and live for another 20, 30 years. It's super common for people to have had breast cancer and moved on with their life, essentially. And so when she got sick, I think I just thought, oh, this sucks, but also it'll be fine, right? She'll do whatever she's got to do and it'll be fine. And so I think the thought that she might die really hadn't even entered my mind. And so I was just operating like everything was going to be fine. And so I was like, I'm still going to do the thing that I'm going to do, which was this. And the timeline then was like, she's in treatment and all of that. And I spent a year like researching the AT, figuring out what I needed, like saving money, buying gear. And then I moved to Yosemite National Park for a few months, like 5 months in the winter before I started the AT. And I did that. And then I came back to my parents' house in Arkansas for a few months before I left for the AT. And then I started hiking on the AT on March 20th of 2015, and my mom died on March 24th. So I had been on trail for 4 days when she died, and I flew back home from the trail and we did all the memorial service stuff. And then one of my uncles asked me, hey, when are you going back out on trail? And I was like, I can't go back out on trail. My mom just died. I have to do things you do when your mom dies, question mark. I didn't really
Right. What is that?
what does that mean? I have no idea, but I was like, you can't just continue to do the thing you were doing before when someone dies like that. I obviously hadn't given any thought about what that would look like because I didn't believe that was going to happen. And so after everybody left and then it was just sort of me and my dad sitting around the house like staring at each other and crying, I started to really think about, can I go back out on the trail? What am I supposed to be doing right now? And I started to realize my presence around my dad's house was not helping him do the grieving he needed to do. I think it was really hard for him because I look like my mom and talk like my mom and just am a shadow of her presence in some way.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that was making it harder for him. And so I decided to go back out on the trail because I partly didn't know what else to do. That's what I had planned to be doing all summer.
Yeah.
And I like spent all this money on gear and like this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I also was just turning 25 at that time by the time I was on trail. And I was going to lose my health insurance at 26. And so I was like, this is my last opportunity to do this like with health insurance. Like very, very like pragmatic things to be thinking about. But I was like, this is kind of a unique moment to do this. And all the things conspired for me to be like, I guess going back out on trail makes sense for me to do. And so I did that. And I had originally wanted to hike the entire AT, but after my mom's death, I said, I'm just going to hike until it doesn't feel like the right thing to do anymore. That was the mentality shift there. And so, yeah, I went back on trail, and I would say like the time in nature was actually a profoundly healing experience for me, and not at all what I originally went out there for, right? Like I was very much going out there to strike out on my own and prove my independence and figure out
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing with life and answer all these big questions. And after my mom's death, it like became a very different thing. But yeah.
And do you think that helped you figure out how to grieve and heal and actually hear your inner voice and even figure out who you were. You were doing a lot of things at 25 that most of us have. We have a lot more time to figure it out because we're not hopefully having to grieve a parent too. And that was probably your first time having to grieve at that level. I feel like there's the
Yeah.
different levels. And then it's like you're out there in nature. And you said you had one margarita on the Appalachian Trail before. But you said, was that kind of like your last drink?
I think so. And I had quit. I'm like, it's 10 years doesn't feel like that long ago, but it's so long ago.
It is.
I had been drinking very heavily in college. I had already started to slow down before my mom's death because I really had started to realize, like, I just don't think this is serving me. I don't necessarily like the way that I am when I drink. And I had gotten to a point where I was tired of apologizing for my behavior, if that makes sense. Like, I was a very unfiltered person when I drank, so I would say things to people that were not very nice.
Yeah.
Partly in service of like making jokes. Like, I was a very cutting, like I would say things that were really outrageous to be funny. But that can also be very hurtful.
Yeah.
And so,
that's me.
yeah,
Even in sobriety, I'm still like, shit, at least now I remember what I
mean,
said.
all of those thoughts are still in my brain for sure, but they stay there where they belong.
Your filter works. Like you go, no, that's an inside thought. And you're
I
like,
shouldn't
okay.
say that. Exactly. Yes. And there was a combination of factors. And I think it was the year before the AT that I did the Sober October. And I remember that being really hard, and not really hard because I wanted to drink, hard because my social circle was very built around drinking. And so I think the harder people struggle with quitting alcohol for various reasons, but I think we really acknowledge and validate the difficulty of addiction, and we don't really acknowledge and validate the difficulty of social pressure in the same way. And I think that for me, like, the challenge was definitely like the people I had surrounded myself with and their expectation that I was going to participate in the thing that we were all doing. And I think
And
that,
especially in your 20s, like I
Yes.
can't even imagine. I didn't quit till I was 40. So it's just,
yeah. And I feel like at 40 or even like 30, you can be like, like alcohol just doesn't make me feel good anymore. But at 24, it's like harder to do that because your friends are like, what are you talking about?
yeah, I knew people when I was like a brand new teacher. We'd go to happy hour and there was a lady who would order root beer. And I was like, what a weirdo. And I was
Right.
like, and she even said, she goes, I'm allergic to alcohol. And I look back at it now, I'm like, she just didn't want to drink. She just had a
Yeah.
really solid. And I thought to myself, I've never heard of somebody being allergic to alcohol, but I accepted it. And I'm like, what a way to get
The
away
things
from
that
the
we have to
questions.
say, yeah. And I do think there's social pressure to participate. I also think that there's this thing where people get offended that you want to do better for yourself, and it makes them think that you think you're better than them. And there's people get this really weird offended thing about other people choosing not to drink when they drink. And I think there's a low level of, I know that what I'm doing is bad for me, and I don't want to see someone else make better choices than I'm willing to make for myself. And so it becomes that person's fault instead of the person who's offended looking inward and being like, maybe this is a me problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely, and that's something I still struggle with, even with older friends, where I'm like, no, it's okay if you drink. I'm really okay with whatever choice you make for yourself. And I always remind myself they're just questioning their own drinking, and it's unfortunate that I'm shining a light on it, but it's very similar to when you suddenly start working out more and you're not a person who's always done that. So you're telling your friends like, sorry, I got to get up for a long run tomorrow morning. And they're like, what? And they're like, but no, not you. And you're like, yeah, me. So do you think that being alcohol free helped you become brave enough to build a bigger and more honest life? Or do you think it was more, and it can be either way. Don't feel like you have to answer the sober route because of the podcast you're on. But or do you think it was just that whole, I'm going to find myself during this time of, you were just alone for a while with the van lifing and I'm always like, oh my gosh, she was so alone, which actually sounds like my dream. I'll be real. But
Being alone can be great. Yeah. It can also be hard. I think that quitting drinking was the first of many steps of seeing my actions as opportunity for conscious decisions. I think that leading up to that point, I was going with the flow and doing what people around me were doing and doing what was expected in many layered ways. And I think that making that choice for myself and then dealing with the social fallout of it and recognizing that as an opportunity. I think it was more that necessarily than being brave, but it was like recognizing, oh, I can make the choice to remove this aspect of my life, and that has created a space now. And I don't really know what's going to go there, but I think I need to fill that space with something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you van lifed, did you build out your van and stuff? Because you don't really talk about that very much. Or did you have a van? Was it something else? Or
I actually had 3 vans over the
oh
course of
wow,
7 years, but the in Alone in Wonderland, I'm in my very first van in the first 6 months of being in the van, so it's a new thing. That van I bought in Las Vegas, Nevada, while I was living in Sedona, and my boyfriend at the time helped me take the seats out, rip the carpet out, put a plywood
that's
floor
right.
down. It was a very basic build, like 2x4s and a plywood floor, and that was it. And then I lived in that for a year and a half, and then I bought a big Ford Transit fancy van, and I had it custom built, which is very expensive. This was all before the pandemic, so it was not nearly as expensive as it became, but that, yeah. So I had one custom built in 2019, and I lived in that one for a year and a half, and then because of the pandemic, I had lost my income and sold that one, and then I actually ended up living in a minivan for several years
I always tell my
after
son, you can
that.
take our minivan and van life.
It's not terrible. It depends on what your lifestyle is. Certainly having the big van that was built out and had room to stand and a proper kitchen and like all of the things that you need was lovely and so comfortable. But I made the minivan thing work for almost 3 years. That I lived in the
I
minivan
knew
longer
it.
than any other van.
So I'm
So
always
like
joking with my
it's
husband about it too. I'm like, we got the van right here. When our kids move out, we never have to sleep in their place.
you just
We
bring this
can
minivan.
pimp out the minivan. Sorry, I know I keep totally going off topic, but I'm actually like, oh my God, I have so many questions for all these. Like,
You're like,
I
this
told
outdoor stuff
Christy,
is way more interesting.
yeah, I'm like, ooh, tell me about van lifing. Tell me about this.
Yeah.
So, for people who have not read Alone in Wonderland yet, can you share what the book is really about beyond the miles of the Wonderland Trail? Because I definitely picked it up because it was about the Wonderland Trail, but I was so impressed, like the way you weaved in the story. Like you weaved in the Appalachian Trail in there and the story of your mom and finding yourself. So, what all is it? What was it really about to you when you sat down to write it?
Yeah, yeah. The book is framed with my hike of the Wonderland Trail, which, if people don't know, is a 100-mile loop that goes around Mount Rainier in Washington. But it's really about the independence that we seek when we go into nature alone, and the loneliness that we sometimes find when we seek independence with too much fervor. I think it's really a little bit of a grappling of like, what does independence mean to me and what is the value of it? And at what point have I achieved enough independence and can I move on to like other things, if that
Yeah.
makes sense?
I know I love that because it is, I'm always asking myself, like, why do I put myself in these extreme situations? I do these things that are so freaking hard. And I'm like, why? And I think a little bit of it is to prove to myself that I'm not the girl who can't run the mile anymore. Even in my 40s, I'm still trying to prove that to myself. And
Yeah,
then some of it is to kind of see what I'm made of, but also because I know you really find different parts of you crack open when you do these things. And
for sure.
it's a cool thing to do.
And I think, especially as women, as young girls, we are fed so much story about how dangerous the world is and how we need to be protected and how we shouldn't do things on our own. And I think it's impossible to ever fully unwrite those stories. And we going on these adventures and doing things solo and proving, like you said, constantly having to prove something to ourselves.
Hmm.
And I think we're constantly fighting back against this story that we are like less capable.
Yes. Yeah.
Even though, even no matter how many things you've done to quote unquote prove it to yourself, you're still like, I still have to constantly be reasserting that I am capable.
Yeah. But sometimes I even have to tell myself, you can probably stop now.
You don't have to do this.
You've done a lot of hard shit. You can just relax now. And then sometimes I'm like, that
Yes.
actually sounds really hard. So I was like, that's a whole different rewiring in my brain that I have to do.
Yeah. And we also have the very American, what's the word, belief system that we have to struggle, we have to push, we have to productivity, and also
Oh,
constant self-improvement. I feel like there's a lot of layers of that too.
oh, for sure. Definitely. And so you've shared openly on your Instagram page about having POTS, which I'm going to have you explain what it is, but you're living with a chronic condition. And I know it's changed your relationship with your body and kind of knowing your limits or even understanding your limits. And how has it shaped your identity as the rugged outdoors woman? I love that name too.
Yeah, I got diagnosed with POTS in 2020, but I actually have had it my whole life, as long as I can
Yeah.
remember. And getting diagnosed was really life-changing for me. I have not really received any treatment, so I didn't change my life in that way. It changed my life more in a knowledge and understanding way. But POTS is short for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and
Okay.
it is a form of dysautonomia, which is an umbrella term for dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system controls everything in our body that we aren't controlling consciously. So it's our heart rate, our vasodilation, temperature regulation, blood pressure. To a certain extent, it's your breathing and oxygenation of cells, your digestion. Like
Oh, wow.
it's just everything that's just happening in your body all the time. And dysfunction of that can mean a million different things, which is why dysautonomia is an umbrella term. There's a bunch of stuff it can be. And POTS is largely centered around like blood pressure and heart rate. And then there's a bunch of other things that happen as a cascading effect of that. But essentially, my blood pressure and vasodilation, vasorestriction doesn't like return blood to my heart as efficiently as it should. And so then my heart has to beat faster. And commonly, people with POTS will faint when they stand up because of the blood pressure dysregulation. I have never fainted, but I have what I call brownouts, which are like almost fainting.
Yeah.
And it's dizziness is really common, nausea is really common. But when I exercise, my heart rate is way, way faster than it should be. And so my whole life, like running the mile as a child PE, as soon as I start to do anything beyond just like walking on a flat surface, my heart rate will go up to 175 immediately.
Oh, wow.
And so there's not really such a thing as like an easy jog for a person with POTS. Like jogging is the same as sprinting to my body, essentially. And so, yeah, it makes things really challenging. And it caused me to have a really complicated relationship with my body at quite a young age because it was very clear to me from my childhood that something was different about my body. I also was a kid who would cry if we had to play tag. Like, I would be the one who got tagged and then I could never catch anyone else. Like, I was slow and as soon as I started running, I was like gasping for air. Like, it was just one of those things where I was like looking around going, I'm not as good as the other kids around me. But I didn't have explanation or language for that. And so getting diagnosed in 2020, I was 30 years old at that time. So I had lived 30 years in this body functioning the way that it does and becoming a hiker and overcoming some of those things and learning to work with my body a bit along the way, but without any explanation or any ability to figure out like why things were the way they were makes it really hard to work with my body. So when I got diagnosed, they gave me a pamphlet of information that was like, here's a bunch of symptoms, and I was like, check, yes, this is all exactly on the nose of everything I've experienced my whole life. And then there was a list of things that you can do to try to help regulate and mitigate the symptoms. And a lot of those things were things I was already doing. So it was like really good sleep
Mm.
hygiene, paying a lot of attention to hydration, food. They suggest that you exercise regularly. And I had found as I gotten older and gotten into hiking that the more I exercised, the better I felt. And so I was doing those things. Some of the other things were no caffeine, which I had figured out pretty young, like in college, that caffeine really affected me negatively. And so I had
Mm.
stopped consuming caffeine a long time before that. And then no alcohol was one of the things that was on the list. And like I said, this was 2020. I had quit drinking in 2015. And there were a lot of layers to the reasons that I quit drinking. But I think one of them was like this, I don't feel good when I drink. And it took not drinking to realize how it was making me feel. I think that's
Yeah.
true. That's true for a lot of things where it's not till you stop that you're like, oh, that was not
That
great.
wasn't helping me.
But it's one of those things like alcohol really, it acts on your nervous system. And when your nervous system is already faulty and not working well, then it's so bad for all of those things. Yeah, that was one of the things that I was like, oh, I've already done that. So
Yeah. You're like, oh, already totally treated myself. Thank you.
But then having that information, like I was able to really like dial in some of the things that needed a little bit more attention and pay attention to them with a new lens. And that was really useful to me and
Yeah.
it has improved my quality of life a lot.
And how validating to find out you're thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me all the time. And then, oh my gosh, there actually is.
It's so
Yes!
different.
It's kind of hooray, except for, oh crap. But
Yes, it's both. It really is. And it's so different to just have this overwhelming feeling of something is wrong with me and that's a value judgment on me versus something is wrong with me that has been diagnosed and is actually wrong.
yeah. And the fact that you haven't let it slow you down at all. You just did like a crazy, like peak to peak run. I'm not familiar with it. It was in New Mexico, right? Did you do that?
What did I do?
I think it was like I swear it was a peak to peak trail run, but you didn't actually complete it in the time you wanted to. You're like, what did I do?
Yeah,
I'm like, was it you? I know I read it on your page, but I know you have a lot of women featured on your page.
This was last summer, yeah. There's a 32-mile traverse of the Wheeler Range that hits 12,000 plus foot peaks. And when I moved to Taos, New Mexico, I was like, I'm going to do this Taos Traverse. It seems cool. And things went awry, but I did do all of the miles of the route, just not all in one go.
That's it's still crazy. I'm always like, it's still crazy. It's that I think you always too, when you're part of like the outdoorsy community, there's always somebody a little crazier than you.
100%.
So you're always like, oh,
Yes.
it's not that.
I think one of the things I think about a lot is just a moving goalpost of being an outdoors person or an athlete of any kind is things that seemed impossible to you once are very doable now, but there's still like, oh, I could be doing that. I could be doing
my
that.
gosh.
It's the easiest thing in the world to find somebody doing something that you think is crazy.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
No matter
kind
where
of a
you
good
are.
thing. It's a good thing because it'll keep you busy. So with the idea of not drinking and with the way you live your life, what does the idea of no more wasted days mean to you? I ask all of my guests this.
I think I try to live by a philosophy of every yes is 1,000 no's. Every choice that we make is giving up other choices, right? We're choosing to do this, which means we cannot do all of those other things. And I think that in my youth, I consumed a lot of alcohol because I didn't have a lot of other things I was interested in doing. It didn't feel like a no to a bunch of other things because I didn't know what the other things were. And as I had my eyes opened to the possibility of other things that I could be doing with my time, energy, body, mental space to drink and to spend my time and doing that just wasn't 1,000 no's I was like willing to give.
I'm gonna have to remember that. Every yes is 1,000 no's. I'm always trying to remember, don't do it unless it's a hell yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too, for sure.
It has been so fun getting to talk to you. Where can my listeners find you and find your book?
Yeah, you can talk to me on Instagram or Substack at Rugged Outdoorswoman. Those are kind of my two main creation spaces. I have a website, ruggedoutdoorswoman.com, where you can purchase books, stickers, t-shirts, cool merch, and things. And then I run the Outdoorsy Woman Plus book club and book pod. So I have a podcast where I interview authors of outdoor adventure books. So if you're into that kind of thing, that's a cool space to check out. And then, yeah, we do the book club where we read one book per month and hang out and talk about adventure and books.
Love it. I'm like, I need to get into the book club.
You're going to join our book club, right?
Yeah, I think I have to. I know I've seen some of your books and I've been like, read that one, did that one, haven't read that one, add it to the list. Because it's always funny when people are like, have you read? I'm like, I can't remember titles of all of them.
Oh, yeah. If you do mostly hiking, like long distance hiking books, I have a million of those. But in the book club it's all outdoor adventure. So
yeah,
it's
I love that.
Broader.
Because you just did The River's Daughter?
Yes.
And that one I have on hold at the library because another friend just read it. And she's, you have to read this one if you love your outdoor memoirs. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I do.
It's really good. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to remember that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you.
Oh, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. I know that it was a little niche for me, but I truly do love reading memoirs about women who have done these amazing outdoorsy things. And I honestly feel so grateful that I was able to connect with one of the authors of one of those books today. I hope that after listening, you feel inspired to take on an alcohol-free journey, and I hope you're feeling inspired to see that you are so much more than alcohol. And when you ditch alcohol, a whole new world opens up to you, and you're able to find out who you really are. Be sure to go follow Christine Reed at Rugged Outdoorswoman and check out her book, Alone in Wonderland. And if you haven't already, be sure to give a review to the No More Wasted Days podcast. This is the best way to support the podcast, and it's totally free. So if you're on Spotify, just hit that rating button. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment and be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on Apple Podcast, leave a written review. I love to read those. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be in your ear in the next episode.